Hello and welcome to Horror Homestead. My name is GiBi. Before we start, I want to divert your attention to my new podcast. It's called Slappendipity. It's me and my friend Eric, who are two creative people, with me being an established YouTuber who's been doing this for 6 years, and him being an aspiring voice actor. On the podcast, we tell stories from our personal and professional lives, we set the podcast in a fictional place called Happy Slappy Town, and we build lore for the setting as we go. There's a lot of what Eric calls little magic in our lives, and it manifests in the podcast as crazy coincidences and the serendipity in Happy Slappy Town, thus Slappendipity. First 5 episodes are up now. Even if you listen and it's not for you, just stop by, say hi to Eric in the comments. And now on to the video. I made a community poll a few days ago asking which quick turnaround video you all wanted me to make, and The Truth About Mrs Afton won by a huge margin. Unfortunately, that script got way too long. Part of that script was me diving into why Clara from The Immortal and the Restless is not a stand-in for Mrs Afton. That section got so long that I decided to make it its own video. This video. People believe Clara to be a Mrs Afton stand-in so strongly that Clara Afton is the community's fan name to refer to this character. And it makes sense as to why. The Immortal and the Restless is clearly some sort of depiction or reference or stand-in for an element of the FNAF story and its characters. Vlad, the undead purple vampire, is William, so Vlad's wife, Clara, is probably William's wife. The Immortal and the Restless depicts Clara and Vlad as spouses who are arguing about Vlad paying child support for their baby. The two are at least engaged, given that Clara threatens to keep the diamond ring, although she refers to Vlad's house as his house, so likely they were never married. Vlad and the baby are obviously vampires. The baby sleeps upside down, can turn into a bat, it ate a cat, etc. And Clara argues that since the only vampire she's ever been with is Vlad, obviously he is the father. But Vlad keeps denying this. That is, until the end, when Clara threatens to keep the ring, and he says it doesn't matter because he got it in a kid's meal. Clara realizes that this means that Vlad bought their baby a kid's meal, and therefore views himself as the father, and the two make up. The narrator then comes in to ask,
"But what about the baby? What about the back child support?" Stay tuned next season for those answers and more.
The assumption as to the meaning of this TV show has affected FNAF discourse for years, and I think who you think these characters represent will have a great impact on how you interpret the story. In my research, it's a commonly held belief, and especially at the time the game came out this was the case, that the baby vampire is a stand-in for Mike. Vlad is a vampire, William is undead, and at the end of Sister Location, Mike becomes a living zombie. So this is akin to how Vlad's son is a vampire. William's son is also some sort of undead monstrosity. If this is the case, then it's possible that William tried to disown Mike, or even refused to admit that he was his son. This also implies strife in his marriage. I've seen posts where people discuss how painful Mike's childhood must have been, with a father who refused to admit that he was his father. While this is certainly a valid and logical conclusion, I don't think it's the most likely one. Within the context of the game itself, I think it's more likely that the baby is Baby. It doesn't have a name, so they keep calling it The Baby, and this is the game where Baby was introduced. Vlad is still William. In this interpretation, Clara is still Mrs. Afton. But the TV show is almost a hint to Mike about Baby being a, quote, vampire, like William. Both are animatronics haunted by a real person. William is Springtrap, Elizabeth is Baby. The ending narration saying, "What about the baby? Find out next season," is a hint that the next game will conclude Baby's story. But I don't agree, and there's one piece of evidence that backs up my theory. In the FNAF security logbook, Mike writes that he relates to the character Clara from The Immortal and the Restless because everything about this place is crazy, and no one seems to notice except me. That would make Mike Clara. I do still think Baby is Baby, But if Mike is Clara, then a lot more things make sense. Vlad, who doesn't believe Mike, is either the public or Fazbear Entertainment, although arguably Fazbear Entertainment might also be his father, given that William is a founder. It's someone who doesn't believe him and is gaslighting him. I think it makes sense that what Mike sees on TV is mirroring his own experiences at the moment. The characters aren't one-to-one stand-ins for the relationships of characters within the larger FNAF franchise. It's depicting similar events to the ones happening concurrently in Sister Location. Since we don't see inside Mike's head at all during the game, at least until the ending monologue, the TV show is expressing his thoughts and feelings. We know from the ending monologue that William sent Mike to Circus Baby Entertainment and Rental, and told him Baby would be down there. They don't recognize Mike, but then think he's William. He puts Baby or Elizabeth back together, and then they scoop him. Between these nights, he's watching The Immortal and the Restless. So who's to say Mike isn't leaving his shift, going to his manager or William or hand unit or phone guy, who's purple, depending on your understanding of the timeline, and saying, Baby is clearly sapient and talking to me. And then the Fazbear representative is like, nah bro, not our animatronic, not our baby. And Mike's like, yo, she's like reprogramming stuff and opening doors? And they're like, nah. Well, that's the relationship Clara has with Vlad and Baby. It's not one-to-one characters or character traits or relationships, but instead scenarios. Mike relates to a TV character's situation and headspace, not her relationship. Clara and Vlad being husband and wife doesn't mean that the characters they represent are husband and wife. Vlad being a vampire might not even be a reference to William being an animatronic, but instead to Circus Baby Entertainment and Rental being a resurrected Freddy Fazbear's. And again, since William is the owner of that company, it makes sense that Vlad is purple even though he's not literally William. Circus Babies is the undead version of Freddy's, and it is responsible for Baby the animatronic. The scene that makes me think this is more legit is when Clara burns down Vlad's house, because Mike will go on to burn down a Freddy-adjacent establishment, that being Fazbear's Fright. The baby also eats a cat. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, there's a story where a snake that represents Baby eats a kitten that represents Elizabeth. So that's also possibly what this is referencing. Two references to a baby stand-in eating a cat is probably on purpose. If the Immortal and the Restless represent Mike's struggle with his father's company after discovering Baby, then I think it gives us good insight into his character during the events of Sister Location. I'm a big believer that the lore implications of Easter eggs and minigames are proportional to the Easter egg itself. The Immortal and the Restless is not implying that William disowned Mike, because that would have happened like over a decade ago. It's not inventing the character of Mrs Afton and then dropping lore like she and William got a divorce or they never married. It's not lore for the sake of lore. It's an explanation as to what's going on right now in Sister Location. Keep in mind, you're supposed to watch these cutscenes as you play the game, not as one chunk after the fact in a YouTube compilation. The fact that William admitting that Baby is his and the two reconciling happens in a non-canon good ending, where Mike escapes Baby's trap, finds his father's office, sees that this is all clearly his father's doing, and then goes home to watch the finale. Vlad, or William, Circus Babies, etc., saying, yes it is me, and then those two reconciling, is the good ending, the best possible outcome, the one that didn't happen. The last canonical episode of The Immortal and the Restless ends with Clara dramatically revealing that she set Vlad's house on fire. To us, the player, the last interaction Mike had with William was them facing off in FNAF 3, and Mike setting it on fire. Sister Location ends with Springtrap waking up in the wreckage from the fire as a tease to the next game. Whether Vlad is Fazbear Entertainment or William, or both William and Fazbear Entertainment, doesn't really matter. I think between the logbook and the burning, it's clear that Clara is Mike. My personal belief, which is arguably a bias, that small details mean small lore, would indicate that this in-universe TV show isn't providing us the background and only canonical information about an otherwise unseen character, that being Mrs. Afton. It's telling the story of Sister Location. The 3 characters in the show are the 3 characters in the game: William, Mike, and Elizabeth. I don't have a conclusion for how this fits into the wider FNAF story and what it might imply about the nature of Mike and William's relationship. The timeline placement of Sister Location is hotly debated, so it might have further implications depending on where any given theorist places Sister Location chronologically. But this is where I want to end my video. My main conclusion is that Clara isn't Mrs. Afton, that people saw Vlad as William, and therefore Vlad's wife is William's wife, and I think that popular surface-level interpretation may have closed off people from developing theories based on other interpretations. Like all of my videos, I hope people take this idea and run with it. See where it goes in your own personal interpretation of the story, come up with counter-arguments or further evidence, and leave your ideas in the comments. Or, if it inspires you to make your own video, do that too. YouTuber Sire Squawks has a video that goes over some of this evidence, and he comes to a similar conclusion. I'm glad that I'm not the only person who believes this, but I will always advocate that if you have your own ideas or opinions, you make your voice heard and express yourself. Remember to be nice to each other in the comments, consider supporting the creators you admire, and never lose sight of the things that are important to you. And remember that Freddy's stands for Friendly, Respectful Engagement, Discussion, and Discourse Yield Pizza. And check out Slappindippity, Hobos of Happy Slappy Town, if you want to hear me yap about things other than Five Nights at Freddy's. Link is in the description, along with a Patreon that will make sure I get videos out at a pace quicker than once a month. Thank you for watching.